meeting in order, and let me start. It is indeed an honor and a great pleasure to welcome you to this special summit of the IGAD Head of State and Government on the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. You would agree with me, this pandemic presents a profound challenge to our region. It will have an impact on our health system. You know it, it is already very fragile, weak, and this pandemic, the fight against it, to a large degree depends on how strong your health system is. Challenge the developed world, let alone our systems. It has profound impact on our economies. Over the years, we have made excellent progress in terms of achieving the SDGs, progress in all fronts, but particularly in the economic front. This pandemic has the potential to destroy all this and send us right back where we started decades ago. It has very serious implications on our economy, on our societies. Checks everything we believe in as Africans in terms of issues related to our social structures, relations, our funerals, our weddings. Everything is linked to communal life. This virus is checking it very seriously. And also it has enormous challenges, because we have enormous challenges, including the availability of medical professionals. We know our situation. Hospital beds, insurance systems, which is almost nil, critical equipment. If this is a challenge to the developed world, let alone our own situation, how would it look like? In consultation with the Executive Secretary and some of you, we decided to hold this special summit, and I can think about 4 major objectives. First, we would like to appraise the current and future state of the pandemic in the IGAD region. Second, coordinate regional responses, particularly in cross-border support arrangements. Establish a command post, probably, if you agree, led by the chairperson, the Executive Secretary. We facilitate information sharing among member states and coordinate capacity building programs for national response to the pandemic. You have, Excellencies, the agenda in front of you. Following this brief welcoming remarks, we have about 5 agendas. The status and updates on the COVID by the Executive Secretary. And I would allow Your Excellencies the opportunity to make your statements. Then we have a discussion on particular issues, particular things that are relating to the original response strategy, probably establishment of an IGAD emergency fund, and then mobilizing support for from the international community, and then mobilizing support from our own. I would like at this juncture to welcome His Excellency President Museveni. Your Excellency, you are welcome.
Thank you so much.
President, thank you. And then agenda item 5, we will adopt the communique and any other business. So, thanks. You agree with me? I think we can move ahead with the agenda.
Good morning. How are you?
Very fine.
Okay. Any comment on the agenda? I see none. The agenda is adopted.
Good morning.
So let's move straight to the secondary. Dr. Riak. Let's move straight to the, unless there is any addition.
Adoption de l'ordre du jour. Hein? Il est en train de faire adopter l'ordre du jour. Ouais. Après, il va donner la parole à Howard Kennedy.
Can I resume, Your Excellency?
Yes, please. Yes. Let's go to the second agenda item, which is the status update on COVID-19 in the IGAD region by the Executive Secretary. So please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Excellency, our Chair. Excellencies, the heads of states and governments of our region, it is with a sense of cautious optimism that I welcome you, Excellencies, to this extraordinary summit of the IGAD heads of states and governments. We are convened in this virtual space to deliberate on the issue of the COVID-19 pandemic in our region and come up with coordinated regional response and strategy to collectively combat the coronavirus here and around the world. Only this extraordinary summit, Your Excellencies, under these difficult circumstances is a powerful message indeed that the welfare of our 270 million citizens in your first priority, and that each and every one of them is close to your hearts. Your Excellencies, I am optimistic because under your leadership, Your Excellencies, IGAD has developed strong reputation of responding to the crisis that affected our region and for bringing the member states together to formulate regional solutions. Collectively, I am sure that once again, Your Excellencies shall come up with a solution to the coronavirus to scale that is greater than that of the sum of its parts. Your Excellencies, there are indeed troubled times. Our countries are caught between the hammer and the anvil. On one hand, we have barely recovered from the first round of the worst desert locust invasion that our region has seen in 25 years. A second invasion is on its way, threatening to severely affect Kenya, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Somalia. On the other hand, we now have to contend with the threat of full-blown outbreak of COVID-19 that may claim thousands of lives, hundreds of thousands of lives. In addition, Your Excellencies, the UN predicts that the global economy is headed for recession, and it is likely to be the worst economic slowdown we have experienced in living memories. Our people stand to lose significant level of income. We must act quickly and in concert in order to prevent a situation where we are overwhelmed by the health, social, and economic consequences of the pandemic. Let me take this opportunity, Your Excellencies, to thank and commend Your Excellencies for the efforts you made before the coronavirus became a global threat by strengthening peace, security, and the successful transition process in the region. You put a lockdown on armed conflict before the virus imposes a lockdown on us. In addition, we are grateful for the swift action that Your Excellencies have taken to contain the spread of the virus in our region. IGAD owes a debt of gratitude to our chair for the efforts he has been making to mobilize support from the international community. And we fully support the initiative of the Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, to galvanize the international community toward a common strategy. The passion he has brought to this battle against the coronavirus has energized us all. IGAD is also thankful for the generous donation to Africa for medical supplies, laboratory testing kits, and personal protective equipment from the founder director of the Alibaba Group by the initiative of Excellency, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. IGAD also appreciates the steps Your Excellencies have taken towards relieving the economic impact of COVID-19 on the people of the region, especially the movement of essential goods and continued operation of service providers. Your Excellencies, the coronavirus is an equal opportunity killer that we must fight with equal determination. As of this morning, Your Excellencies, it has affected 723,328 people and claimed a life of more than 34,000 lives worldwide. In our region, Your Excellencies, we have been fortunate so far with only 8 confirmed cases of infection, but we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. And the rate of the infection and death is growing exponentially. On 13th of January 2020, the WHO declared the outbreak of COVID-19 as a public health emergency of international concern. Until then, it had taken 3 months to record the first 100,000 cases of the infection, Your Excellency. After that, it took 12 days to confirm the next 100,000 cases, and then 4 days to reach 400,000, and only 1.5 days to reach 500,000 confirmed cases. These numbers
welcome President Uhuru. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Your Excellency.
Good morning. I apologize for being a little bit late, but happy to join all of you this morning.
Thank you. Welcome.
Morning.
Welcome. Karibu.
Asante.
These numbers show that the clear and present danger that for our region and citizens in the face of this threat. I wish at this time to draw your attention to an often overlooked yet highly vulnerable section of population in our region. Currently, the IGAD region hosts 1 out of every 5 refugees in the world, and we are providing temporary home to over 4 million refugees. This population is the least able to access our national health system. Let me propose, Your Excellencies, for your consideration 5 broad measures that will form the basis of regional response strategy and will further enable the IGAD region efficiently and effectively respond to the threat of coronavirus. Number 1, establish the IGAD emergency fund for the control and prevention of the pandemic disease. This fund will pool resources from both traditionally and non-traditional donors, including the private sector. In order to kickstart the fund, IGAD staff have already begun making personal contributions. Furthermore, we are proposing to request our current pool of funding partners to consider diverting some of the budget resources in ongoing projects toward supporting the fight against COVID-19. Number 2, strengthen the coordination of whole of government approach to responding to the COVID-19 pandemic in IGAD member states. This will be realized by channeling it through the IGAD Regional Disease Surveillance and Response Mechanism that was established in 2016. Number 3, mobilize medical professionals and support from the IGAD community in the diaspora to join the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic in the IGAD region. As you are aware, Your Excellencies, some of the developed countries have begun easing visa restriction for healthcare workers, even if there is no transport to bring them to that country. Number 4, strengthening the engagement with the international community to support IGAD member states to coordinate the collective prevention and response measures to COVID-19. Toward this, Your Excellencies, I am pleased to report to Your Excellencies that IGAD is already following up commitment made by European Union and the WHO to assist countries to develop national preparedness plans and to implement testing and containment measures. The number 5 and the last one, but not the least, enhance interventions that reduce the social and economic impact of COVID-19 on vulnerable and economically distressed populations. This is especially true for the cross-border, especially in our region. In our cross-border communities, we will need to have the highest level of cooperation. In conclusion, Your Excellencies, it is my firm belief that, like similar regional initiatives that have been launched by Your Excellencies under the banner of IGAD, regional strategies that we are going to launch here today will become a norm-setting model on regional solidarity for the rest of the world to learn from and follow. Excellencies, you have my personal assurance that the IGAD Secretariat will follow your guidance and proceed to fully and faithfully execute your directives and implement your decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Executive Secretary. Now, let us listen to brief interventions from Your Excellencies. I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Haile Margeli.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency Abdullah Hamdok, Prime Minister of the Republic of Sudan and Chairperson of IGAD, Your Excellencies, Heads of States and Governments of IGAD member states, Your Excellency Dr. Warkana Gabayo, good morning to you all. I would like to start by thanking our brother Abiy Ahmed, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, for his important and timely initiative of extraordinary IGAD summit on COVID-19. We have all been watching this deadly pandemic as it inexorably made its way to our shores. As of today, we have registered 21 cases in Djibouti, and we continue to increase our testing and contact tracing capabilities. In the same way, we have devoted 2 hospitals to the pandemic to avoid overwhelming our general hospitals in the capital city and putting a strain on limited healthcare resources. We are in the process of setting up additional sites to deal with a possible surge in cases. Our motto is test, trace, and treat. In these circumstances, and given the trajectory of the virus, we do not need to scale up our stocks of PPE equipment, ventilators, testing kits, and any therapeutic drugs that are needed. Despite taking drastic measures relatively early, such as stopping all passenger flights to and from Djibouti as of March 18, closing schools and universities right after that, and ordering a general lockdown since March 27, we remain vigilant and concerned not only about the scale of the pandemic, but also of its aftermath. As you all know, lockdown measures and travel restrictions, along with the need for unforeseen medical spending, have already put a significant strain on our economies and our public spending. The consequences are already being felt, particularly by the most vulnerable population in our respective countries, which requires urgent mitigating measures and emergency assistance as thousands lose their daily incomes. In that context, it is vital that we put in place a regional response to the pandemic, but also to the underlying socio-economic crisis. Our response can then be twofold. First, build up our regional testing and medical equipment capabilities through the creation of an IGAD COVID-19 fund in order to stamp down the virus not only in our respective countries, but also within our region, so that we can resume some economic activity at our level. 2, coordinate our strategies to avoid a possible regional surge or resurge of the virus. As we have seen, some countries like Japan and China have gone back to a somewhat normal activity levels after taking drastic measures to protect their population, such as strict lockdowns and mass testing. I believe the sooner we can collectively flatten the curve, the better off our peoples will be. To that end, we would like to join our voice to that of the UN Secretary General's pledge the international community to assist our continent to handle this deadly pandemic and its aftermath. Last but not least, Djibouti would like to offer its full support to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's call on G20 countries for a $150 billion of emergency assistance to African countries so we can provide quick relief to our most vulnerable populations. The virus knows no nationality nor border, so more than ever, regional coordination and assistance is key in how well and how soon we all get through those difficult times. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, President Ismail. I would like now to give the floor to Excellency Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of Ethiopia. Abiy, please.
Your Excellency Abdullah Hamdok, Prime Minister of Sudan, and our Chair, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, a very good morning to all of you. The coronavirus outbreak will present the largest global economic shock and downturn that we have seen since the end of the Second World War. It is quite serious, especially for us Africans. The coming 2 weeks a very critical time for us, which requires collective leadership and collective act. When we see it geopolitically in containing the crisis, there must be collective leadership and collective action on coordinating, on combating this outbreak. However, we should also note, amid the endless dark news cycle, there are inspiring stories of dedication, self-sacrifice, and human fellowship. In this respect, we are thankful to our frontline health workers. They are our heroes, and we are forever grateful. When we see the impact, the loss of lives and associated suffering will remain by far the most profound causes of this pandemic. We need to pull out all the stops of minimize them at whatever the cost. The economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic will also be massive. All jobs are at risk of layoffs, reduced pay, lost hours. Virtually every sector of the economic stands to lose as businesses. Householding incomes will be devastated, and spending by consumers and firms will rapidly decline. The collapse of the service economy, which employs most workers next to agriculture, has already begun. Manufacturing will be next. The health pandemic thus will lead to another of economic crisis. Domino effect will continue across many domains, from collapsing government and business failures to impoverished communities, declining health outcomes. Ethiopia will be uniquely challenged as it has a very limited physical space. Ethiopia's specific impacts, including the following: remittance accounts for a big part of our foreign exchange, and it will likely decline. The service sector, hotel, restaurant, retail, bar, etc. They employ most in urban Ethiopia will be massively hit. Tourism will be greatly negatively impacted. The demand for Ethiopia export, coffee, sesame, flowers, and others will be highly impacted. price shock will happen as individuals seek to stockpile. In period of scarcity, there will be likely a rapid rise in price. So our response, in my opinion, is simply in terms we need both national action and regional action. As it's proposed by Chair and Secretary, we should do things together first to combat the outbreak. The first priority is to mobilize. The goal is getting coronavirus under control. This means making ready emergency health centers. It also means increasing the availability of testing and diagnostic equipment, medical supplies, and protective clothing. It also means protecting the most vulnerable in our society. We should also push donors to fund fully the WHO USD 675 million emergency appeal launched in January. WHO is well placed to support us. We know if prevention and containment fail and COVID-19 spreads, Africa's health system will be unable to withstand the burden. Second, we need to push for a coordinated corona response package from G20. Africa needs commitment from World Bank Group and IMF to inject liquidity, not less than USD 150 billion. Third, as I said in my 3 points proposed to G20, we need to make a case of cancellation of all debt payment to our creditors. Finally, we need to adopt the responsibility to report officially as early warning and response system. We need to a much stronger global mechanism to deal with the threat of pandemic, the duty to report and share information on new contagious threats to WHO, for instance with national governments. Excellencies, as a region, if we think together and if we cooperate to combat this epidemic, I'm sure IGAD will play a great role in our continent. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for arranging this meeting, and I hope we'll keep in touch to combat this epidemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I would like now to give the floor to President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and once again, good morning to all of you. Let me begin first and foremost by thanking you, Prime Minister Hamdok, for convening this meeting at this critical moment in our history. I would also like to thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Wokne, and your entire team for taking advantage of information technology to make this meeting happen this morning. Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, today we are faced with a stark reality of an unprecedented global health challenge following the COVID-19 outbreak. This widespread pandemic is having a devastating effect on the global community, but also on our own regional economies. It is true that as of now, infection rates in Africa and in our region remain comparatively low compared with the alarming levels of spread elsewhere. But I believe there should be no doubts in our minds that we remain in real danger of devastating upsurges unless we take decisive, collaborative actions together. It is therefore necessary that we not only share our experiences, but more importantly, agree on collective regional response systems to this pandemic. This is not a problem that can be successfully fought and won by one nation alone. It needs us working together. With regard to Kenya, our situation and state of preparedness, Your Excellencies, as of today, the total confirmed COVID-19 cases in Kenya stands at 38, with 1 recovery and 1 death. After the first case was reported, we moved quickly as a government and instituted response measures in line with the World Health Organization protocols, and these are as follows. We established a National Emergency Response Committee charged with ensuring the public health safety of all Kenyans and residents. 2, we adopted a comprehensive and multifaceted whole-of-government approach led by the Ministry of Health, with state agencies complementing and private sector entities complementing government efforts. We are continuously enhancing our testing and quarantine capacity with the support of our development partners. And 4, we are currently enforcing a daily dusk to dawn curfew as of Friday, the 27th of March, in our entire territory, with the exception for medical professionals, health workers, specified critical and essential service providers. And 5, we undertook many other measures, including the closing of schools, suspending international passenger flights, mandatory quarantine of all suspected cases. We have suspended gatherings, religious congregations, and otherwise limiting the passenger capacity of our public service vehicles and introducing a work-from-home policy. Number 6, we adopted educational programs on TV and radio and other IT-based platforms so that our children in primary and secondary schools can continue with their learning while still at home. And number 7, we worked together and approved the Google Loon services to enable universal 4G data coverage countrywide, to enable more people across our country to work from home. To cushion our people from the economic adverse impact of the disease, my administration has further introduced a raft of measures, including 100% tax relief per month to all those in the lowest wage scale, while at the same time increasing the bracket of those who are eligible. 2, a reduction of the resident income tax from 30% to 25%. 3, a reduction of VAT from 16% to 14%. And 4, encouraging the use of mobile money, credit and debit cards instead of cash in executing payments. Your Excellencies, we also participated in a conference call with the Bureau of the African Union, who are already seized with this matter, and a meeting of the Bureau of AU heads of state and government took place on the 26th of March through teleconferencing. And one of the key outcomes of the meeting was the establishment of a continental anti-COVID-19 fund, to which members of the Bureau agreed to immediately contribute $12.5 million as seed money, and the Bureau further agreed to contribute an amount of $4.5 million towards boosting the capacity of the AU Center for Disease Control in Addis Ababa. In that spirit, Kenya pledged to contribute $2 million and $1 million respectfully. Beyond the continent, we also agreed that our chair, the President of South Africa, would engage with the G20 with a view of mobilizing funds to help the African continent address the existential threat posed by COVID-19. I would at this point like to register our sincere gratitude to friends of the continent like Jack Ma for donating testing kits and other equipment, for which I also thank you, our brother, Prime Minister of Ethiopia, for facilitating the shipment of these testing kits. The G20 leaders, we understand now, have committed to further strengthen the World Health Organization's mandate in coordinating the international fight against the pandemic, including the protection of frontline health workers and the delivery of medical supplies, including diagnostic tools. They have also undertaken to use all available policy tools to minimize the economic and social damage from the pandemic, restore global market growth, maintain market stability and resilience. Your Excellency, dear colleagues, our meeting today under these extraordinary circumstances is a confirmation of our shared conviction that we must work together in addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. As part of one security system with its own unique issues, it is critical to ensure that we are all in the fight, pulling together in one direction until this war is won. And in this regard, I would like to propose that we, number one, direct our ministers of health to urgently formulate a regional response to COVID-19 that adopts a whole government approach, considering that the pandemic poses a grave security threat. Two, that we agree to intensify information sharing among our relevant officials, including tracking of infected persons. Number three, to direct our relevant agencies to enhance cooperation in border control and management, with a view to ensure safety along our common borders, while at the same time guaranteeing the movement of goods which is required. And number four, to request the African Union to designate IGAD as a regional task force in the fight against the virus and as the regional coordinating and advocacy mechanism. Five, to undertake to contribute to the AU Anti-COVID-19 Fund in order for us to encourage our development partners to contribute to it. And six, to call on the African Union, the United Nations and the international community to prioritize the protection of our troops and personnel serving in peacekeeping missions in the IGAD region against COVID-19, taking into consideration the harsh conditions that they already operate in and the critical services they are offering. Seven, to appeal to the international community to urgently provide assistance to vulnerable groups, particularly refugees within IGAD countries, and to support our national efforts to ensure that humanitarian corridors remain open. And seven, agree to undertake joint mobilization of resources from international institutions, development partners, as well as the private sector within the continent and our borders in support of our regional COVID-19 response strategy. And finally, to direct our ministers of finance and economy to urgently carry out a comprehensive assessment of the economic impact of COVID-19 and to formulate appropriate response programs to reposition our economies back to a path of strong growth and shared prosperity. The assessment would form the basis for joint engagement with international partners such as the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the African Development Bank, and the G20 for economic stimulus packages. Your Excellencies, even as we deal with coronavirus, we should bear in mind the possibility of another wave of locust invasion that is likely to aggravate the vulnerability of our communities. We must therefore cooperate with the assistance of the international community in efforts to stop this second wave of locust invasion from happening. As I conclude, I would like to once again reiterate the imperative for us to forge a common front against this global pandemic, and to assure you, colleagues, that my administration will do whatever is within our power and capacity to extend any support that our brothers and sisters in our neighboring countries may require. I believe that together and by working together, we shall prevail and we shall overcome this pandemic. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would like now to give the floor to President Muhammad Abdullahi. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Your Excellency, Your Excellency Abdullah Hamdok, Prime Minister of Sudan, Your Excellencies, Head of State and Government, I warmly welcome this timely IGAD Special Summit of the Head of State and Government on the coronavirus pandemic. I thank my brother, His Excellency Abdullah Hamdok, the Prime Minister of Sudan and the Chair of the IGAD Assembly of the Heads of State and Government, and Dr. Wakana, our Executive Secretary, for bringing us all together today for this crucial summit. I wanted to thank Dr. Abiy Ahmed to take this initiative for this summit. I also recognize the commitment from the head of states and governments of IGAD, family of nations, to address the deadly coronavirus together at this challenging time as an evidence by this very summit. Coronavirus has challenged the world in a ways never seen before, unlike every other nation in the world. Somalia has focused on understanding, prevention, and response to this deadly health threat to which the world still remains vulnerable more than anything else. As previously said, according to the international reports, the number of cases of virus has surpassed 700,000, with a death toll of over 20,000 lives. Despite all the global efforts, these vital, heartbreaking numbers continue to rise daily. Indeed, these are tragic numbers in uncertain time for the world as a whole. The international response to the coronavirus is commendable, but it is indicative of how unprepared the world was for an epidemic of this kind. Our global collective response, which includes targeted public information campaigns, social distancing, closure of public spaces, institutions and businesses, restriction, movement, and quarantine of affected patients, is also a sign of how little we actually still know of this deadly virus. Accordingly, what matters more than anything else today is cooperation collaboration and common actions in keep each of us citizens safe. In Somalia, we have 3 reported cases of coronavirus so far, and we have since taken all necessary measures and policy actions to combat and mitigate these effects and impact. While the Federal Ministry of Health and federal member states' health teams and experts are doing a great job on the ground, still Somalia is vulnerable to health emergency in this scale because of the infancy of this health system, and infrastructure, which are only now starting to take shape. I wanted to thank Dr. Abiy for distributing the testing case. We also fully recognizing this and the menacing rates at which the coronavirus is spreading globally and within our own region. I welcome the development of IGAD regional strategy to combat and mitigate this health pandemic. I also encourage the urgent establishment of a mechanism through which our regional medical experts, led by the Ministries of Health and Public Health agencies, can communicate, share information, coordinate regional efforts in this war against coronavirus. These knowledge-based actions and their clinical and public health interventions are key to saving lives of our brotherly people. Indeed, coronavirus knows no border, and we need to shield ourselves with a common defense against it. The impact of coronavirus extends beyond a global medical emergency. It has caused panic, fear, and according to the International Monetary Fund, can cause a global recession. This is a painful reality in our region, with a private sector activities and trade values falling, while the potential side effects are most likely to be and business confidence. Given the necessary public health policy measures adopted globally and by almost all industry, from aviation, retail, professional services to tourism, are suffering, and this is already having a disastrous effect on domestic revenue mobilization and personal income. The economic losses are grave, and as a region, while we may have individual economic and physical intervention to ease the pain on a short-term basis, we do benefit from a collective fund to mitigate the worst of the economic shock to come from virus in a medium and long terms. On these crucial financial matters, the mobilization of regional windows of international financial institutions, especially the World Bank and the African Development Bank, are important, as they will complement our individual countries' allocations and ongoing our future health projects. I therefore propose a separate IGAD finance ministers meeting with the development banks and relevant bilateral and multilateral partners to take these matters forward. In conclusion, the coronavirus is a challenge to us today in an unprecedented ways, and it has laid bare our national and regional preparedness weaknesses for global pandemics and economic shocks. It's truly deadly and will need every ounce of our efforts and cooperation to ensure we keep our people, countries, and regions safe from it while mitigating its devastating health and economic impacts. The coronavirus epidemic must be the final wake-up call for us to work even more closely together for regional, social, economic, and political cooperation to ensure the security, development, and common prosperity for our brotherly people. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would like now to give the floor to His Excellency, very much. Your Excellency, the floor is yours. President Museveni.
President Museveni va ziara.
President Museveni, you have the floor. Your Excellency.
Our chairman, Your Excellency, the Prime Minister of the Sudan, Right Honorable Hamdok, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, I greet you, and I'm sorry about all this suffering because of the new problem of the coronavirus. Actually, this virus is easy to avoid. This is our conclusion. It is easy to avoid because it spreads in two ways. Number one, somebody cough or sneeze near other people in a distance of 4 meters. And then the nearby people are infected by the droplets or the discharge from the man who has coughed or has sneezed. That's one way. So that's why people are talking of social distance, keeping away, not being near one another. But also, there's no reason why somebody who is coughing should go in public, should not be allowed in public. Anybody coughing should stay at home, either willingly or by force, if he's not sensible enough to keep away by himself. So this is one way. Surely, once our people are educated, they can avoid this problem. The second way is again because of the coughing or the sneezing or people who are infected touching their nose, touching surfaces, touching tables, touching door handles, touching other books and keys and so on. Then the virus stays on those surfaces. And when somebody is touching those surfaces, that's not bad enough. You can touch, the virus stays on your hands, and it will not infect you. The problem, however, comes when you touch yourself in the soft parts of the face. That is the mouth, the nose, and the eyes. That's how you get infected. But this is the second way. I've not heard of another way. The not told me of another way. So you can see that this is really mainly due to carelessness and lack of information. That's why, therefore, because of this, for us, from the beginning, we started discouraging people from shaking hands, from hugging, and knowing the carelessness of our people, we decided to adopt a strategy of dispersing the concentrations of people. Because we were aware that there could be carelessness and you get one person in the midst of this big group of people who then carries either sneezes or coughs or touching surfaces, which again the other people also carry the touch and then touch themselves. So that's why we went for the big concentrations of our people in order to disperse them. The schools, the 15 million people Ugandans in the schools, we send them home. The churches, we were able to tell everybody that God is everywhere. You can pray in your house. Then the other public transport, buses and so on. So our target was dispersing these concentrated groups. Then insisting on people washing their hands, and so in Uganda we have now had 33 cases of corona confirmed, almost all of them coming from outside, especially from Dubai and from UK and from the United States. All the 33, except two, or except three. One infant who was infected by his father, who had visited the neighboring country, and then the wife and the daughter who were infected by somebody who was returning from Dubai. They are all in a stable condition. Nobody has died, and they seem to be improving. I therefore think that with enough education, this problem can be handled. The three ways of spreading are coughing, sneezing, where there are other people. Secondly, touching surfaces which have been contaminated by the sneezers and the coughers, and then touching your eyes or your nose or your mouth. If you only touch, but you don't touch your eyes, those soft parts, the virus will not get into you according to what the scientists have been telling us. Therefore, in our strategy of dispersing the big populations, the sectors of the economy that should be left open should be farms, farming. Fortunately, farmers farm in dispersed ways. They are not concentrated, especially our type of farming. They are not concentrated. So the farmers have we don't have problem unless we get the problem from the town. Those ones will continue working. Then the factories, they will continue producing if we adopt the method of the workers camping near the factory. The danger comes from commuting, going home, coming back. That's where they either take the disease home or bring it from home to the factory. But if they can come near the factories for just half a month, then the production will not be affected. What must continue operating is cargo transport. We stopped passenger transport. The buses, the minibuses, the mad category of transporting here, which we call borders. These are motorcycles. I don't think anybody in the world knows about it except us. The borders, we stopped all those, the aircrafts for passengers, we stopped them. What should remain open, and I recommend this to the whole region, is cargo transport. Cargo transport. Because if the farms remain producing, then the cargo transport is continuing, the lorries, the trains, the cargo planes, the pickups, even the motorcycles. If you want to transport cargo, you have no problem, because cargo does not necessarily carry virus. To the human beings who carry virus. Then we shall have the minimum that is necessary for us to survive. Farming, factory production, and cargo transport, linking the two, linking the food and the export. Once we do that, I think we shall be safe. The sectors which have suffered are sectors of tourism, entertainment, singing, and dancing, and nightclubs, and those concerts, and all those things, those have suffered. But I actually see an opportunity in this problem of enhanced manufacturing, because these Ugandans have been depending on a lot of imports from outside, which they can make here. Now that there is this interruption of imports, they seem to be waking up and beginning to manufacture, the things that they are buying from all over the place. So I think that one can be, even in this problem, we can enhance manufacturing, and it may compensate for the other sectors, the tourism, which will for sure suffer. And that's why the funds want to mobilize from the World Bank and from the IMF and from other groups. Part of those funds should go to enhance the local manufacturing by our factories. For instance, these Ugandans have been importing what they call sanitizer from I don't know where. And yet they are experts in making those, they have been making a type of sanitizer, but to kill themselves. This is something called waragi. Waragi is a spirit which is very, very strong and very dangerous for the health. Now, with this, the closing of the international trade, these fellows have woken up and they are adding a little bit of temperature to the waragi they were putting in their bodies, from 30% alcohol to 80%, and they make it the sanitizer. From the same raw material, from sugarcane, from bananas, they are being so after Africa should use this time to enhance manufacturing, because you have seen the dangers of depending on imports for drugs, imports for sanitizers, imports for these face masks, for gloves. All this should stop, should make the things here, because we have the raw materials. I totally support the idea of the fund to deal partly with the shifting of the African economies to self-sufficiency using this chaos, but also provide relief for the vulnerable. I thank you very much for calling this conference, Prime Minister Hamdok. Thank you, Secretary General of IGAD, and thank you, Your Excellency, for attending this.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Excellency. I would like now to extend a very special welcome to my brother, Dr. Riek Machar, the first Vice President of the Republic of South Sudan. Your Excellency, your presence among us today is a testimony to the progress that you are making in this region. You're welcome, Excellency.
Your Excellency. Your Excellency, Dr. Abdullah Hamdok, Prime Minister of Sudan, Your Excellencies, IGAD heads of state and government, on behalf of President Salva Kiir Mayardit, I wish to thank the Chair and the IGAD Secretariat and His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed for making it possible to convene this timely summit to discuss COVID-19 pandemic, in particular, the regional response to this pandemic. I would like to take this opportunity to apologize to you, Your Excellencies, that the President is not available to address this summit due to some unavoidable circumstances. To date, the government of the Republic of South Sudan has not registered any case of coronavirus yet, but we have taken critical actions to minimize the risk of exposure despite economic and social damage these actions entail. Coronavirus is a pandemic that requires unity of purpose in fighting it, nationally and regionally. As such, taking early concerted actions is necessary to save life. My president and the government is prepared to take further actions through collective arrangements with IGAD to fight the importation and further spread of COVID-19 in the region. The government, with support of partners, developed a South Sudan COVID-19 country preparedness and response plan. Although South Sudan remains COVID-19 free, to date, our health care professionals have investigated 16 cases or suspected cases at the National Public Health Laboratory in Juba. Majority of these suspects had history of recent travel to or from a COVID-affected country, underlying the high risk of importing the disease through travel connections with our neighbors and worldwide. South Sudan has porous borders with 6 neighboring countries, which further increases the risk of spreading the virus into the country. To mitigate the risk, the President has constituted a high-level task force on COVID-19 pandemic chaired by himself and deputized by the first Vice President to provide leadership and mobilize resources. Our Ministry of Health has established a national steering committee to guide the day-to-day preparedness and response activities through 9 technical working groups. With respect to mitigating the risk, the government has taken the following actions. 1, we have closed schools. We have discouraged gatherings in mosques, churches, and sports. We have reduced working hours to half time. We have asked non-essential staff to work from home. We have stopped nightclubs. We have closed the borders despite the fact that the borders are porous. We have reduced the capacity of passengers buses. We have stopped Bodo from operation. We have limited the passengers in Rashka to 2. We did this to mitigate the risk. The a high-level task force on the pandemic has invested on the following strategies. 1, preventing importation and interrupting transmission and spread of the virus in the context of complying with the International Health Regulations 2005. 2, enhancing surveillance, including national toll-free hotline, the PCR testing competencies, and we're actually using 3 testing kits: German testing kit, Chinese testing kit, and a South African testing kit, so that we see where there may be variants. And capacitating the infectious disease center. 3, communicating risk to the communities and counter misinformation. 4, well-coordinated preparedness and response through early identification, isolation, and provision of adequate care for patients. 5, minimizing social and economic impact through multi-sectoral partnership. Your Excellencies, we have challenges. 1, meeting the required budget for this emergency. 2, controlling movement of population across the porous borders. 3, movement of goods, particularly food, fuel, medicines, drugs, and medical products. 4, creation of awareness and sensitization of the population. 5, inadequate human resource capacity. 6, inadequate facilities for isolation and quarantine nationwide. 7, inadequate equipment such as test kits, ventilators, protective gears, face masks, gloves, etc. 8, inadequate transportation and referral system. And finally, we are struggling with religious and cultural beliefs, because there are other religious groups that don't believe in what is happening. Our recommendations on regional joint action: 1 is the border control. We know how difficult that is going to be. 2, technical cooperation is necessary at this stage. 3, sharing information between us. 4, mobilizing for regional fund. 5, mobilizing support for medical professionals in the diaspora. We have already told our diasporans to be on the standby, so that if it is possible, they could help. Thank you, Your Excellency, for the participation.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Your Excellencies, I think in my opening remarks, I've talked about COVID-19 in general, but let me, with your permission, just share with you briefly our specific case on Sudan. Like all of you, the cases that we have registered are still low. We have yet 6 cases, 1 unfortunate death. All came from abroad, from outside the country. Like all of you, we also taken very drastic measures, including closing all universities and schools, reducing public service workforce and hours, ban travel within the country between states, closed borders, ban commercial flights. All hospitals and university dorms are listed for worst case situations. We also imposed a curfew, 6 p.m. We suspended all sports and social gatherings. Also put in place and started implementing plans for social protection for our vulnerable segments of society. This is an extremely challenging situation, particularly most of our people are making their living from the informal sector, from all this. So it's really challenging to find resources to support this sector. But also on other initiatives on your behalf, I have written to the World Bank and the IMF calling for a regional initiative for our region to address this challenge. You know so well the amount of resources pledged by the two institutions, and we were asking them, pleading to them to support us on this. And I think all of you alluded to some proposals on how these resources that will be made available, all the IFIs can be put to better use in this. To support all the proposals you have made, including the establishing the emergency fund and all that. I would also like to join all of you to thank Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of Ethiopia, for all the initiatives he has taken on behalf of the continent and our region. Whether talking to the G20, China, IFIs, and the WHO. This is a pandemic. We have to join hands, all of us together, to address it, meet it, to defeat it. And I think with our resolve and working together, we'll be able to do precisely that. On our meeting today, I think I'm very much encouraged. The fact that up to now we are almost close to 2 hours having this virtual meeting. I think we should use this more often. It's very efficient. And maybe also, as President Huru had said, it's probably saving us time and resources and all that. We should do it quite often. The next agenda item is discussions. Item 4, you have the agenda in front of you. We have 4 items there. I would like to think in your interventions you've touched on all of them. I don't think, in the interest of time, we would like to take them one by one to discuss. And I would like to propose a course of action. We look at them. One, the IGAD regional response strategy to the COVID-19 pandemic. We've touched on all the elements of this. Linked to this is number 4, mobilizing support to IGAD medical professionals in the diaspora. I would like us to entrust these 2 items with the support of the Secretariat to our health ministers. Work on this, come up with a strategy and look at implementation, modalities and all that. I'd like to see your responses to this. On 2nd and 3rd items, establishment of the IGAD emergency fund and mobilizing support from the international community. I think these 2 items, we can safely entrust them to our finance minister. They can also meet virtually like this, to discuss plan, strategy, and see with the support of the Secretariat to move this process forward. So, Excellencies, I would like to get your response to this. Who would like to take it? President Museveni.
A common response. Now we do common response, regional response.
President Museveni.
I didn't get your points very clear about the support.
It's very far. Huh? Can you hear me?
I didn't get the point about
Is it a problem with everybody that you are not hearing me?
Prime Minister, we can hear you.
Okay, but President Museveni, I think we're also finding it difficult to hear you. I don't know what the others are hearing. Probably it is where you are.
I support.
Okay. President Ismail.
Yes, we support also your initiatives and let's go.
Okay. President Horo. Yeah.
We also support fully your recommendations, and possibly you can reconvene us again once the finance ministers have met and once the IGAD Secretariat has also come together with some clear proposals. You can call for another meeting and we can see the proposals that they shall put through. But otherwise, we support.
Thank you so much. Dr.
Your
Riak.
Excellency, we support your proposal and support the proposal made by. Thank you.
Hello? Dr. Riak, you finished?
Yes, I am through. We support your proposal.
Okay. I guess there is a consensus on this.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Let's move to the last agenda item, which is the one before last, the adoption of the communique. Executive Secretary, can you take us through that, or maybe the main elements of it?
Thank you, Excellency. There are points that I am going to add, especially the issues of the finance ministers and the health ministers. That's a very important point I'm going to address on this communique, but we already circulated the communique to the head, to the member states. But if necessary, if you allow me, I can read.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Excellency. With the head of state and the government of the Intergovernmental Authority convening via video conference at the extraordinary summit in coronavirus disease pandemic in 13th of March 2020. Number one, deeply concerned by the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, which constitutes an unprecedented global health crisis affecting a large part of the world. Taking note on increasing level of coronavirus infections in IGAD member states and the looming threat of a health crisis in the region. Gravely concerned by the unsustainable and potentially counterproductive uncoordinated global responses and unconnected country-specific measures to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. Number four, emphasizing the need for coordinated global and regional leadership and approach to respond to health and economic implications of COVID-19 pandemic. Recognizing the urgent need for a comprehensive multi-sectorial, especially in the health and economy, acknowledging the central role and the proactive support of the African Union and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention by the CDC through capacitation and healthcare providers and emergency response teams, as well as provision of medical supplies, including test kits. Further acknowledging the extraordinary sacrifice made by healthcare delivery workers across the world and in the IGAD region to combat COVID-19 pandemic, appreciating the swift action taken by all the IGAD heads of states and governments to contain and combat the spread of the coronavirus, recognizing the effort and initiatives of His Excellency Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok, the chair of the IGAD Assembly of Heads of Government and States, to mobilize support from the international community to combat COVID-19 in the IGAD region, supporting the effort of the Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed Ali, to galvanize the international community toward formulating a global strategy to tackle the human and economic cost of the coronavirus scourge. Cognizant that the COVID-19 crisis comes at a time when the IGAD region has barely recovered from the first round of the worst desert locust invasion in 25 years, with the second invasion is on its way, threatening to severely affect livelihood in Kenya, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Somalia. Welcoming the initiation of the Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, His Excellency Abiy Ahmed, to mobilize international support for IGAD region and the generous donation of medical supplies, laboratory testing kits, and personal protective equipment from the founder and director of the Alibaba Group to African countries, including IGAD member states, commending the extraordinary effort of the World Health Organization to coordinate global and regional response to the COVID-19 pandemic, including support to the national health system of IGAD countries, appreciating the support from the international community towards preventing the spread of the coronavirus in Africa and strengthening health systems on the continent and in the IGAD region. Further appreciating the tremendous effort of stakeholders that have ensured the continuity of supply chain and provision of critical and essential services for the population of the IGAD region. We now hereby solemnly resolve the following. Number one, collectively formulate a comprehensive regional response strategy and an accompanying implementation plan to address the COVID-19 pandemic in the IGAD region that also incorporates the protection of populations and special groups that face difficulties accessing the national health system, such as IDPs, refugees, and migrants. Number two, establish an IGAD emergency fund for the control and prevention of pandemic diseases. Number three, expedite the adoption of the coordinated whole of government approach to responding to COVID-19 pandemic in IGAD member states. Number four, strengthen the IGAD regional mechanism for responding to outbreak of pandemic disease through increased capacitation of the regional disease surveillance, early warning and response system. Number five, mobilize medical professionals and support from the IGAD community in the diaspora to join the fight against COVID-19 pandemic in the IGAD region. Six, facilitate an enabling environment for strengthening national public health systems in IGAD member states to deliver and respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. On support from international community, IGAD call upon international community to adopt a globally coordinated and coherent approach to tackle this public health crisis. Call upon the international community to sufficiently empower and resource the World Health Organization and coordinate global responses to all pandemics, including COVID-19, and directly assist government in the IGAD member states. Number three, call upon the international finance institutions, bilateral, regional, and international partners, especially World Bank, IMF, AFDB, to accelerate debt relief processes and provide access to financial assistance, concessionally loans, and essential support to IGAD member state and the Secretariat. Number four, integrate the international community to support the IGAD Regional Emergency Fund for the control of pandemics, disease, and the strengthening of health systems on the region. Appeal to the international finance institution to urgently extend monetary and physical support to additional to existing flexibility for IGAD member states to access finances in need to respond to social and economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Request international financial institutions to support the distressed private sector in the IGAD region. Urge medical professionals from the IGAD community in the diaspora to join the fight against COVID-19 pandemic in the IGAD region. Encourage the private sector to support the IGAD regional response to COVID. We commit to remain actively seized of this matter. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you very much, Executive Secretary. I think we've listened to the Executive Secretary. Any comment on the communique? I think it covers all the issues that we have discussed quite adequately. Shall we go ahead and approve it?
One issue, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Go ahead.
Everything is excellent. We need to make a case for cancellation of all day payments for this community.
Prime Minister, can't hear you.
Shall I repeat it?
Yes, please.
I was asking, everything is excellent except adding one case for cancellation all day payments for our creditors must be included because they might push us and it might be create a problem in our economy.
Excellent. We'll add that. I think with this we can approve the communique, and that brings us to the last agenda item, which is any other business. Are there any other businesses?
No, we agree that the debt should be also added.
Yes, we agree. Yeah. We agree to add that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You did a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate. We look forward to hearing from you again on the date of our next meeting.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. This has been a very, I think, a very rewarding and excellent experiment. Continue this. It's so easy. So thanks you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah, I saw you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. أهلا وسهلا.
أهلا أهلا مع السلامة.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency.
Hi, مع السلامة. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Don't forget the meeting of the finance minister.
Yes, I will not forget. I will catch both of the health and the finance. Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes, I will do. Thank
Okay,
you.
Dr. Riak.
Excellency, our chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Executive Secretary. This is excellent job.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank
Amazing.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Have a
Yes.
great day.
Thank you. Same to you.
Excellent.
I think it went very well.
لا لا very well. طيب يا اخي انا عندي اجتماعين.
لا
واحد يتلغى والثاني لازم الحقه.
200 اجتماع ثاني.
واحد ثاني الساعه 12.